Hey everyone, how's it going? Forrest here, again with another installment of my complete analysis of all of Bach's chorale harmonizations. Today we're looking at Es ist das Heil uns kommen her, which translates to Salvation has come to us. This is a chorale with some interesting chord progressions in it. It's exclusively tonal, and some of the chord progressions that Bach employs here, they're a little interesting. Some of the chord choices and the use of chromaticism on strong beats is pretty cool. We'll talk about it. So we start off in the key of E major, I think, 4 sharps. We start on E, and then we end on E over G sharp. That's kind of interesting, but still, I think we're in the key of E major. We have E, B, F sharp, and B. This F sharp is a accented non-chord tone. I think this G sharp is our chord tone here, which would just imply another E major triad. We then have D sharp, F sharp, A, and B, which is B7 over D sharp. That's 5, 6, 5. And then we have E, E, G sharp, and B, which is another E major chord. That's our tonic triad. Some passing tones in the upper voices, kind of like a passing 4 chord. Not necessarily a passing 4 chord. Like a passing 4 chord. Sorry, I thought A sharp was in the key. No, it's like A major, A, C sharp, and then the 2 E's in the bass, which is kind of pertinent because the chord we get after this is G sharp, E, B, and D natural, which is a secondary dominant chord, not E major, but rather 5, 6, 5 of 4, because A major is our subdominant, or our 4. And 5, 6, 5 would imply the fact that the chord is in first inversion, and that goes to A major, or kind of it goes to A major, A, E, B, and C sharp. But this B is an accented non-chord tone, and the C sharp resolution happens on the next beat. But at the same time we get the resolution on the next beat, we get F sharp, which kind of muddies the chord here. So I think 4 is being implied. But I think you could make the argument that this is also a 6/6 chord, just by virtue of the fact that the F sharp happens at the same time the resolution happens. And this is a roundabout way of calling this a deceptive progression in the key of A major, in the key of A major. But interestingly enough, we're actually going to the key of D major here, and my bracket's really low because my handwriting is really big. Sorry. But yeah, I think this is now our 5 chord in the key of D major. 5 or 3, depending on how you look at it, but I'm going to make the argument that it's our 5 chord. We then have G major over B, B, G natural, D, and B, which is our 4 chord, or more specifically our 4/6. And then we have some passing tones here, C sharp, G, E, and B, which would make a C sharp minor 7 flat 5 chord in root position. Which would be like a 4/7 progression that then cadences on D major, D, D, F sharp, and A, which is our tonic, and that would be an imperfect authentic cadence. It's kind of interesting for Bach to visit D major directly from E major because they're not adjacent keys. They're 2 notches away from one another on the circle of fifths, but they do have a chord in common. They have 2 chords in common actually, maybe even more. I think they have 2 chords in common, and that's it. I'd have to dwell on that a little bit where the video is recording, so I don't have a lot of time. But looking ahead, we have actually a perfect authentic cadence in the key of B major, but we get there via E major. So this is a direct modulation with the cross relations going on here, D natural and D sharp happening one after the other. Granted, it is after a pause, so this does feel like a new idea. We have B major over D sharp. D sharp, B, F sharp, and B with a passing 7th in the melody. That's our 5 chord in the key of E major. And then we get E major afterwards, E, B, E, and G sharp with some passing tones in the tenor and the melody. So this E major would be our tonic. And then we get another E major chord on the next beat, E, G sharp, B, and E. Then we have another passing tone in the melody, but a delayed passing tone in the bass, which would be a 7th, and this F sharp is just a regular old passing tone. And then we get C sharp, E, and G sharp. That's a submediate in the key of E major. That's our 6. And I think this is the point in which we modulate to the key of B major, because C sharp minor is also our 2 chord. We also have a passing tone in the bass here. We then get E, F sharp, C sharp, and A sharp. I think this E is not necessarily an accented non-chord tone, but it is I don't think it's the focus here, because we would expect the 7th to resolve down by step. That's pretty typical of Bach, and the fact that it's just part of a line continuing upward makes me feel like he's just arriving at the tonic late, or the root late. So I'm just going to call this a 5 chord. You can call it a 5-4-2 chord if you'd like. I think that both are valid analyses depending on how you look at it. And then we have B major over D sharp afterwards. D sharp, F sharp, F sharp, and B, which is our tonic triad and first inversion. Then it kind of gets turned into root position afterwards, but because there's no 3rd in the chord, I'm not going to mark it. It's like 3 roots and a 5th. We then have F sharp major, F sharp, A sharp, F sharp, and C sharp, which is our 5 chord, with a delayed 7th here in the alto before we cadence on B major, B, F sharp, D sharp, and B, which is our tonic triad. Okay, next cadence is another perfect authentic cadence in the key of B, and we stay in the key of B the entire time. No modulations. So we start off with an E major chord, E, G sharp, E, and B. That's our 4 chord. Passing 7th in the bass, passing tone in the alto. We then get C sharp, G sharp, and E. We might be tempted to call that a 2 chord in the key of B major, but I think this A sharp is our chord tone. A, C sharp, and E. That is a 7-6 chord, A sharp diminished over C sharp, and that goes to B major, B, D sharp, B, D sharp. Another one of those interesting voicings that has 2 roots and 2 thirds. We also have a passing tone in the tenor. Then we have F sharp, A sharp carrying over from earlier in the measure, and C sharp. That's our 5 chord, with a passing tone in the bass and a passing tone in the alto, before we get A, B, F sharp, and D sharp. Wait, sorry, did I read that right? Yeah. A, B, F sharp, and D sharp. That's really interesting. That would imply that this chord, I analyzed this wrong in my notes. I'm really glad that I did analyze it incorrectly in my notes. So if this was a B major triad with A natural in the bass, that would imply that this chord is functioning differently. We have B major, it's kind of like we have a 1 chord here, but what this chord actually is 5-4-2 of 4, because B also happens to be the dominant of E major, as we've learned earlier in the chorale. And then that resolves the way that we would expect. The 7th resolves down by step. It just does so by being enclosed. G sharp, B, B, and E, which is a 4-6 chord. And then we get movement in 3 of the voices. 2 of them step down and then skip down and step up. The melody steps down. We get E, B, G sharp, and D. That's kind of like taking the chord and turning it into a root position 7 chord. I'll just go ahead and mark it that way and add the 5-3 as well. Let me make sure everything's in parentheses. Like so. And then we have F sharp major. F sharp, A sharp, and C sharp. That's our 5 chord. Passing 7th in the tenor before we cadence on B major. B, D sharp, F sharp, and B, which is our tonic triad. And then we get another interesting modulation that consists of a very brief visit to E major, because our next phrase ends in a half cadence in the key of F sharp minor. So we go from B major via the B major chord, which is also functioning like our dominant in the key of E, directly to E, G sharp, and B. And the way that I think I know this, not just by intuition, but the fact that we get A natural immediately afterwards is somewhat telling. We have some passing tones in the bass and the alto before we get G sharp, B, and E, another tonic triad in first inversion. And then we have some passing tones in 3 of the voices. If 3 or 4 of the voices are involved, I tend to look more deliberately for a chord, like a subdivision of the harmonic rhythm. So here we have A, C sharp, A, and E. And now that I look at this E major chord, because I think with this D natural here we have already modulated to the key of F sharp minor, I think this E might actually be our chord that modulates us to the key of F sharp minor. It's our common chord, which happens to be 7-6, or actually, and this is what I was seeing, 5, 6 of 3, when 7 wants to go to 3 via the cycle of falling fifths, but subtonic sevenths, because they're major in quality, could also function like a dominant, whereas the leading tone is so synonymous with minor keys that typically a lot of people they just look for the leading tone to be the chord root, and when it doesn't exist, the chord isn't it isn't a diatonic chord anymore, it's a secondary dominant. I think that they both exist and can be used interchangeably, just one has more oomph, more impact, and a stronger trajectorial effect on the chorale. But it's interesting because it does go to a 3 chord, A major, A, C sharp, A, and E, which is a root position 3 chord. And then we have a B, D, G sharp, and B, with a passing 7th in the alto. That's G sharp diminished in first inversion, which in the key of F sharp minor would be our supertonic 2/6. And then we go to B, C sharp, E sharp, and C. Very interesting voicing. This is a C sharp 7 chord. We know because it has a major third from the root, which is C sharp, and our bass is our 7th, so that would be a 5/4/2 chord, which shares a bass with 2/6. And it resolves where we would expect. The 7th resolves down by step, but maybe the chord on top of it isn't what we would expect, because we have the F sharp, we have the C sharp, we have the A, but we also have a D sharp in there, so we have some harmonization of the melodic minor scale, the F sharp melodic minor scale here. So instead of a tonic triad, we get a bit of a deceptive progression. We get D sharp minor 7 flat 5 over A, which is second inversion, 6 chord. And a 6 chord turns into a diminished triad as its foundation. When you raise the 6th scale degree, it turns from major to diminished. And then we have G sharp, E sharp, G sharp, and G sharp, which would imply an E sharp diminished chord, even though we don't have the 5th. Am I missing a B somewhere? We know that it's somewhat implying the E sharp diminished chord, even though the chord is not fully contextualized here. 2 G sharps and 2 E sharps. It could be a C sharp major chord. It could be an E sharp diminished chord. I'm going to hedge my bets and call it a 7/6 chord, which would be E sharp diminished. But it could be a rootless C sharp major triad as well. Pick your poison. We have some non-chord tones here happening on all of the beats, which typically means that the harmonic rhythm's being subdivided. We have F sharp, C sharp, and A, which is our tonic triad, F sharp minor. So we get very quick chord progression here, where the majority of the offbeats are actually 7 of the 8 eighth notes in this measure are being harmonized. That's pretty dense. It's about as dense as Bach gets, and Bach is already a very chordally dense composer in general across all of his music, from what I know. And then that regardless, that tonic triad takes us to E sharp, G sharp, C sharp, and B. That's C sharp 7 over E sharp. That's 5/6/5. This G sharp's a chord tone, this C sharp's a chord tone. We then get F sharp minor, F sharp, C sharp, G sharp, which is a 9/8 suspension over the bass. A, this F sharp is our chord tone right here, that's our tonic triad. And then we cadence on C major, or C sharp major, C sharp, F sharp, and G sharp. This F sharp's a 4/3 suspension. That resolves down to our chord tone, which is C sharp major is our 5 chord. It's interesting how 9/8 suspensions and 4/3 suspensions get paired a lot. That's something that I've been passively noticing, but it's just only being further affirmed by looking at the counterpoint in Bach's writing. So looking ahead, we have our last phrase that ends in a perfect authentic cadence in the key of E major in kind of an unusual fashion. We're looking for a point in which we modulate to the key of E major, and it happens, I think, around the time where we get this E natural. So it's kind of an interesting progression that gets us there, though. We have another C sharp major chord, C sharp, E sharp, and G sharp, with a passing 7th on the bass. So that's another C sharp major chord, no need to reanalyze. We then have A, C sharp, F sharp, and F sharp. That's our tonic triad, F sharp major in root position. And I also think that's our chord that gets us back to the key of E major. It is now our supertonic. Then we have some subdivision going on here. We have G sharp, B, E natural, and G sharp, which is like a tonic triad in root position. That then takes us back to an interesting chord. I guess you could make the argument that this is also a 2-chord, F sharp, A natural, C sharp, and A. But interestingly, we typically see the C sharp on this beat here like we did, where was it? It's like 4 going to 7, right? No. Oh yeah, right here. So the 7 chord. So typically we see the 5 of the 7 chord, like in this case it's C sharp minor, C sharp, G sharp, and E natural. And we typically see the difference between these two chords, which is just a step apart, A sharp versus G sharp. But here we have a descending pattern, which means that the 7 is contextualized first. And I think that this is a 7 chord for sure, because we end up going to another tonic triad afterwards, and 7's a much more likely candidate to go to 1 than 2 is, even though we are preceding this 2 with a 1 chord. I would make the argument that because this is a subdivision of the harmonic rhythm, the chord has less of an impact as opposed to 7 going to 1, which happens on 2 metric beats, numbered beats. So this is what I'm going to call a 7/6 chord, and this C sharp is going to be our passing tone before we go to E major over G sharp, E, B, and G sharp, which is our tonic triad and first inversion. Passing tone in the bass, passing tone in the alto before we get, and actually, hold on, let's analyze that. We had this progression earlier, or a similar progression earlier. Where was it? We had, that's like a 4, or a 1 that went to a 4/7. I know that I'm not crazy, I know that I saw this. I'm not going to dwell on it too long though. It was near a cadence, so let's not super complicate it. I feel like I saw this earlier though. Was it this that I saw? Maybe I'm just confusing it. Regardless, I think this is a E, C sharp, and G. That's like a passing 4/7 chord. A major 7. That goes to B major, B, D sharp, and F sharp, which is our 5 chord, with a passing 7th in the tenor. 4/7 wants to go to 5. It's a normative progression, so it's kind of typically the less voices you have involved, the less likely you're subdividing the harmonic rhythm. I think 2 is the minimum. With 1 voice, I don't think you could really subdivide the harmonic rhythm. I think multiple voices need to change in order for there to feel like there is a chord changing. But that's just my opinion. You could have a different opinion, and that might change your analysis, and I welcome that analysis. I think that'd be great to see a varying outlook. But regardless, we have B, G natural, E, and C sharp. This is C sharp diminished, or C sharp minor 7 flat 5. Yeah, C sharp minor 7 flat 5, which would be, it's kind of interesting. Wait, hold on, am I looking at this right now? A sharp, no, I'm sorry. This B is like a lower suspension. It's like a, what would it be? It would be like a 9/10 suspension under the melody, probably, or a 4/5 suspension under the alto, but probably under the melody. This is A sharp, C sharp, E, and G, because the G natural is the interesting tone here. This is A sharp fully diminished 7th, which would be the 7 fully diminished 7th of 5, because A sharp's the leading tone to B. And then we get B afterwards. B, F sharp, B, and D sharp, which is our 5 chord. Then we skip up to this A right here. I think some people would call that an appoggiatura. And it's a 7th as well, which we typically get somewhere near the ending, the very end of the cadence. And then we cadence on not E major, but E major over G sharp, which is a 1/6 chord. It's interesting when we have chords that are inverted at the end. I think we've only seen one other cadence that has had an inverted triad at the end of it. They're much less common than cadences that have a non-authentic cadence at the end, which is saying something, because those are incredibly uncommon. So I'm interested to, passively track what happens more frequently, inverted cadences or non-authentic cadences at the end, because inverting the chord doesn't have as big an impact on the finishing quality of the chorale than changing the quality of the chorale does. So the fact that it's less common is interesting. I wonder why Bach chose to do that. It was just like It must have been a conscious decision, so I wonder why. But I'm going to cap my analysis off on that thought. This was a pretty straightforward chorale. Thank you so much for watching the video and supporting the channel by doing so. If you're interested in following me along on this journey to analyze all of the chorale harmonizations, that is all of Bach's chorale harmonizations, feel free to subscribe. Hit the notification icon. I upload once a day, so if you want your daily dose of Bach or your daily dose of analysis, or both, like which is the point of the channel at this point, subscribing and hitting the notification icon will alert you when I upload a video. But on that note, again, thank you so much for watching the video and supporting the channel. I look forward to tomorrow's analysis, and I hope you take care.